So is our gatherings to celebrate or to commemorate the birthday or the birth of the Prophet ﷺ in group, is that a bid'ah? In the beginning, when the Prophet ﷺ was asked about his reason for fasting on Mondays, he said, هَذَا يَوْمٌ وُلِدْتُ فِيهِ. I fast on Monday because I was born on Monday. I mean, he would fast every Monday to express gratitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that he was born on Monday. So the Prophet ﷺ, how would he do that? By means of fasting. Because that was, like Imam Ibn al-Jawzi, Imam Ibn al-Hajar, and so many other scholars say, it was the most appropriate way for him to express his gratitude towards Allah by means of fasting. That was fasting as a means of gratitude, which was the most appropriate for him to do. After his death alayhi salatu wasalam, we could actually every Monday, literally in light of this hadith, we could be speaking about the Prophet ﷺ, about his birth and so forth. Now, because we don't do that, then people try to do it as close as they think the birth of the birthday, not birthday party, the day where he was born, as close to the birthday of the Prophet ﷺ, yani, to speak about him, to sing songs about him, and singing is halal for men and women, that's okay. Not saying men and women together. Singing is halal for men as it is for women. That is what the Sahaba radiallahu anhu used to do. So if you're going to have a look, then the most appropriate thing for us to do is to be grateful that day towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for having sent the Prophet. And the most appropriate way for us to do it is not through fasting. Because fasting on his birthday would then, for his birthday, we're doing that already every Monday. Every Monday we fast for two reasons. One is the same as the Prophet ﷺ, because that is the day where he was born. And the other reason is because on Monday the deeds are shown to Allah Jalla wa Ala. And he said, I love to fast on Monday because on Monday the deeds are shown to Allah. So when you fast on Monday without knowing it, even those who are against the Mawlid, not saying you're fasting a Mawlid, but you are fasting also as a means of gratitude for the Prophet ﷺ being born. So you do that anyway. So now the only thing is that you will add to that fasting, but you will not be fasting. You add some expression of love and gratitude. And how do people express love and gratitude? By talking about the one they love, by showing that they are happy. Like when you come back from a long journey, then people, they decorate their houses, they sing songs, they clap their hands. They should really love you when they do that. Now they whatever. So, and then you come in, and that's the way that you are invited, that they show, that they express their love and gratitude for you. So, and that is what we do with the Prophet ﷺ. Why didn't the Sahaba radiallahu anhum do this? Well, because the Prophet was in their midst. ﷺ. Why didn't they do that after his death? Now the question is not why didn't they do it, because we say in the usul, the qaid al-usul, we say that not doing anything is not a rule. If they didn't do it, it doesn't imply that it's not permissible. It just means that they didn't do it. And one of the reasons why they didn't do it, because the Prophet ﷺ in the first 3 generations was still mentioned all the time. The hadith were circling around. They were not in need of being reminded of the Prophet ﷺ, because they were reminded of the Prophet ﷺ. Now we live in a time where people no longer know the Messenger of Allah ﷺ, where people are not reminded of that hadith, where we're not in a world of narrators. So at least we try to remind the people once a year, and it should be more, of their Prophet ﷺ, because it's so easy to forget about him. So what day is then better than the day on which he was born? To at least have a construct, at least to have a framework wherein we all agree that is the day where we will talk about him. Not because it's a new kind of worship, but just because it is needed, and that is the day they agreed upon. And this is why you find a lot of scholars being Imam Ibn al-Jawzi, Imam Ibn Hajar al-Haytami, you find Ibn Kathir rahimahullah, you find Imam Suyuti, you find Imam Subki, you find all of these great grand scholars. Not only have they agreed that it's allowed, they have also written their own mawalid, their own poems that you can sing on the day of the birth of the Prophet ﷺ. Ibn Kathir wrote a Mawlid. So yes, the tafsir of Ibn Kathir is okay. And then what they always say, it's not really his. SubhanAllah. Like when they like a scholar, and the scholar says something that they don't like, either it's forged or it was before he met this and this person, or you understood it in the wrong way. It doesn't work like that. Like the majority of our scholars, the traditional scholars, now we have now a new movement like 200 years ago where people think that they understand the deen better than all the previous scholars. And when you mention the names of the scholars of old, they say, no, we only take from the 3 generations. But the 3 generations, are that the only people that we should follow and listen to? Why are you listening to me anyway? Go back, read their books. Where are they? Now, so if we are going to have a look, barakallahu fikum, then they try to erase our cultural, religious background by mentioning only new scholars or 2 scholars of the past or 3. Now, and I respect these scholars, but they will either mention Ibn Taymiyyah, they will mention Ibn al-Qayyim, and Ibn al-Qayyim is a beautiful man, has beautiful books, so I'm not against him, and I'm not saying this to show that I'm not really against him. I love his books. So Madarij al-Salikin, I'm working on Madarij al-Salikin to one day give a class in the light of his book of Ibn al-Qayyim. So Ibn Taymiyyah they mention, Ibn al-Qayyim they mention, and that's usually where it ends. Or Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab, and the new scholars of Saudi Arabia, or of Yemen, who follow the same path. Where are all the other scholars gone? Yeah, meaning that if they wouldn't have existed, we wouldn't have a deen. If I mention names, they say, I don't know these names. Of course you don't. But all the ummah used to know them. I say Imam al-Marzibani. They say, what's the what? Imam al-Laknawi. Laknahu? No, Laknawi. So they just don't know the names, but that doesn't mean they didn't exist. We have thousands, millions of books. And we will not reduce the deen to 2-3 people. You say Ibn Taymiyyah said, I believe in a lot of things that Ibn Taymiyyah said, but even Muhammad bin Salih al-Uthaymeen, in his book about al-ilm, he said, I have a list of the things I agree with Ibn Taymiyyah, and the things I disagree with Ibn Taymiyyah, and the things I disagree with are more than the things I agree with, but I only speak about the things I agree with. That's Imam Ibn al-Uthaymeen, As-Salafi rahimahullah azza wa jal, who says this about himself. So if Ibn Taymiyyah says something, that doesn't make it deen. If Imam al-Nawawi says something, it doesn't make it deen. But it are opinions. And opinions, if they can be justified by means of usul al-fiqh and ijtihad, then there is room for difference. So our problem is not that we differ, our problem is that we don't allow other people to differ. That we think that my opinion of the deen is the only right one and all the rest is for Jahannam. That is not the way that it has worked. If that was the case, we would have Quran and Sunnah without explanation. From the very first generation which they talk about, the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, they differed. But it was a difference of minds and opinions, but not of hearts. Aisha radiallahu anha differed, like Imam al-Zarkashi rahimahullah mentioned in his book. He said in more than 127 matters, fiqh related and aqidah related, about looking at Allah, whether the Prophet ﷺ looked at his Lord or not. She said, someone who claims that the Prophet ﷺ saw his Lord is lying. That's what Aisha radiallahu anha said. Abdullah ibn Abbas said, the Prophet has looked at Allah Jalla wa Ala. So in aqidah, in fiqh, in fatwa, they differed. So this is also, and based on these previous generations, like the Sahaba, from them you have the four madhahib. Imam Abu Hanifa met some of the Sahaba. He is of the first 3 generations. According to some, he was a tabi'i, according to some, a tabi'i from atba' tabi'in. But in reality, Imam al-Laknawi rahimahullah in his Rasail, he says he was born in the year 70. So he has met, like Imam Suyuti rahimahullah mentioned, he has met Anas ibn Malik and other Sahaba. So he was a tabi'i, he's of the first 3 generations you're talking of. And Imam Malik is as well, and Imam Shafi'i is as well. So our madhahib are of these three first generations. And they differ about many things. But they didn't have a problem with these differences. But the people today, they don't tolerate for people to differ. And that splits the ummah into groups. Because if we would allow these differences that are justified to exist and learn how to live with them, we would be one community regardless of the differences we have. Does that make sense? So this is why this is an ijtihadi matter. It's not even a matter of bid'ah. It's not a matter of bid'ah. And I advise all the people who say it's a bid'ah, Yani I would literally advise them to read يعني كتاب الاعتصام of Imam al-Shatibi رحمه الله عز وجل with the verification of a Salafi مشهور Hassan Salman. Now in 4 volumes. And to read al-Muwafaqat of Imam al-Shatibi in 6 volumes with the verification of Sheikh Mashhur Hassan Salman and with the preface of Bakr Abu Zayd, Sheikh Bakr Abu Zayd. Read it. Read these 10 volumes and then come back to me. Because your comprehension of bid'ah is bid'ah. The way you understand the bid'ah is the bid'ah. The simplicity and the superficiality within you causes you to understand bid'ah in a very superficial, unprecedented way. The way you understand bid'ah is not the way that the fuqaha understood bid'ah. It's a fiqhi issue, it's an ijtihadi issue done. And now they say, but we only have 2 Eids, the Prophet ﷺ said. Are we saying this is a Eid? Do we say this is our Islamic Eid? No, it's a gathering. And we're not saying those who don't do it are bad people. I wouldn't say those who don't celebrate the Mawlid, you are bad people, you don't love the Prophet ﷺ. I believe some people, they just like the Mawlid because of the cakes. Naam, and because of the songs. And there are some people who don't celebrate the Mawlid, and they're all about the Prophet ﷺ. So I don't believe it's the proof for you loving the Prophet ﷺ. But I believe if you love him, that you can do this to express that love, not meaning it's the only way to express that love. And that's how I look at it. And that's why, for myself, a lot of people would have problems with me. I don't have problems with anybody. Because I believe that you can love the Prophet ﷺ, you can, without doing a Mawlid. And I believe that maybe you don't love him, and yet you do a Mawlid. So that's the way I look at things. Wallahu subhanahu wa ta'ala alam. But that's in very brief, a very simplistic approach. But inshallah, there will be a video where I will mention all the names of the Mashaykh that agreed. And they can only come back with Mashaykh. So it's Shaykh against Shaykh. So the problem is solved. Your Shaykh says this, the Shaykh says that, done. And I prefer to follow Mashaykh that have been followed by thousands of people than Shaykhs in a new generation that are followed by people that very often don't have very deep rooted knowledge. It's Shaykh against Shaykh. What do you want to do? If they differed in the past, they will differ now. And the more ignorant people are, the more they will differ. وصلى الله وسلم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين.